Yeah. Hi, hello, friends. Welcome and thank you for joining us this evening for the live interactive session. I am Malavika, business owner of Alpha, the academic wing of Anvis Inc., and I'll be your host for this evening. We have our expert, Mr. Anand Vishwanath, along with us, who is the founder of Anvis Inc. and also a canine behaviorist. Anand has a wide experience of dealing with different breeds of dogs for over 30 plus years. Welcome, Anand.
Hey, hi, Malavika. Thank you for having me here once again. It's a pleasure to be here.
So today's topic is something that is very close to my heart, separation anxiety in dogs. I have a lab, a 4-year-old lab, and the first year of the experience that we had and the numerous challenges that we had to face, separation anxiety was one of it. And I didn't know what separation anxiety was at that time. Neither did I know Anand at that time. Things would have been much more easier. So we call it fond memories now, but we know what we went through at that time. So Anand, let's get started. Let's first understand what is separation anxiety exactly.
Right. Separation anxiety is exactly like what it is, as it says, right? When a dog feels an anxiety when there is some kind of a separation, is technically that's what is called separation anxiety. Now, can this separation anxiety be related to people? Can it be related to objects? Can it be related to multiple things? More or less, I think from the generic scheme of things, I think we are looking at separation anxiety that dogs go through with relation to people. And when I say people, it is in most cases it is to do with pet parents themselves, right? Like in your case, right? And we were just having this chat just a little bit earlier before, and then you were saying how Sparkle. And by the way, for the rest of the people, Sparkle is a boy, and we always get confused. I get very confused. Sorry, I think we lost Malvika here through bad connection. But let me just give you guys a clarification on this, right? So Sparkle, which is Malvika's dog, is actually a boy. And then I get really confused because of the name. But anyway, I think Malvika was just telling me a story about how Sparkle had separation anxiety as a 6-month-old, which is typically signs that they probably saw was that when they left the home, Sparkle would end up destroying things at home, like shred newspapers, bite things, pee poo, etc., right? So most people. Hey, hi, Malvika, you're back. I think I was just telling the viewers about the experience that with Sparkle that you had, right? Where you said as a 6-month-old, when you would leave home, he would really destroy stuff, and he would bark, he would pee, he would poo, He would do all these things, right? Are these signs to recognize separation anxiety? So yeah, some of these signs are separation anxiety, but again, it is not really always that these are not. Just because you have this sign doesn't mean that the dog has got separation anxiety. So you need to really understand or get into the a little bit more details to understand, hey, this is separation anxiety, and then how do we look at it? Because also, Malvika, I have to tell you, because we do a lot of consultation, people do call up and then they say, hey, my dog has got separation anxiety. So they have already identified the problem, but or they have identified the problem, but when we actually start talking to them, we realize that it is not separation anxiety. Maybe it is just puppy characteristics that it's displaying. Maybe it is something else. So don't generalize that it is separation anxiety without actually having gone through a complete lowdown of what are the symptoms, what is happening, and hence you determine this is separation anxiety.
Correct. Right. Yeah. So yeah, I think a lot of people, even like that's the mistake that even we did. We just label it as separation anxiety. So let's Anand, we'd like to know more in more detail about what are the signs, what are the symptoms, how do you actually recognize separation anxiety in dogs?
Right. So, see, separation anxiety. Some of the common symptoms are when someone is leaving the pet. Right. It could be either from your home, you're leaving your home, you're going out, or you left your dog at
Mhm.
some place, like maybe a boarding place, at a friend's place, wherever, and you leave the pet and you move out of the house. Now, when you do that, I think one of the bigger signs is dog will start sort of pacing, and you can see the pupils will start dilating. The dog, the anxiety starts building in the dog's head. Pupils will start dilating, dog will start pacing, usually tongue will be out. There'll be frantic up and down because dog will come to you, will go to the door, already knows that something is not okay here, and there is an anxiety level there. And many times, let's say, I'm the boarding place, you've left the dog, you're left your sparkle here with me, and you leave the house. He can, in spite of me being
Right.
here, he can still have, if he has separation anxiety, his same thing will happen, right? His pupils will dilate, he will start pacing, he will stand near a window, he'll start looking for you, he will start barking, and it will be very commonly near the exit points, which is basically near the door or near the window things. And the dog does not really care that someone else is here, right? At that moment, it is just that, hey, there has
Mhm.
been a separation from my loved one, and I'm just going crazy. Where did they go? Where did they leave me, and where did they go? Right.
Right.
uh, Commonly those are really the symptoms, but I have to also tell you that this is very also closely associated with puppies as well. A lot of puppies do that, initial stages, either if they're with their mother or if they have newly come in. So it can start from there, and depending on how we address this as a puppy, can either develop into a proper separation anxiety issue, or we can just help make the dog sort of calm down, etc.
Okay. Oh, okay. So then what is, so where do we get alarmed, and where do we decide that line that okay, this is something that we identify as the first signs of which help a pet parent to identify basically.
Yeah, so see,
Then, or these are just puppy traits.
right. So as a puppy, age, right? So as a puppy, if we see that, hey, there is the pet is showing these kind of symptoms, I think it is still workable. So I will, at that point in time, I will not call it. So when I say puppy, I'm saying I will give it till about 10 months time, that the puppy is going through multiple things, and I will still not really call it as a separation anxiety that is set in, because the puppy is still in a moldable stage to a very large extent. So I will not really
Right.
term it as separation anxiety. I will say anxiety, maybe different levels of anxiety, and we'll try and work through what is causing it, right? However, anything above 1 year, and then you see these symptoms, right? Typically, pupils getting dilated. Let's say if you're leaving the dog and then going once, and there are triggers, right? So basically, the dog will pick up triggers. It could be as simple as you picking up your keys. What is the thing that you do when you have to leave home, right? Let's say you're wearing a jacket, or you wear a
Hmm.
certain perfume, you wear into different clothes, you change into different clothes, etc. You pick up your car keys or home keys to lock it. So those are all triggers. That is what is going acting in the dog's mind, saying, okay, something is. And then you will see, and it is not a suddenly it will not rise, right? So if you keep a notice on the dog, you will realize that it slowly starts. Every little thing that you're doing, like a perfume that you wear, which you know that, hey, this is the perfume that I'm going to wear when I go, the dog picks it up because it knows that, hey, this perfume means that this person is going to leave, right? And when those are the things that the dog is like, level by level, anxiety starts increasing, and then once you go out, either the dog will start barking, howling, scratching the door, standing near the window. And then let's say when you come back, you see there's a lot of destruction. The dog has peed, pooed, right? But mostly the dog is looking very, very stressed, has like either drank a lot of water, has spilled a lot of water. done like a lot of things, but you can make out that the time that you are not there, the dog hasn't been really comfortable, right? So there has been issues. So that I would really say is a case of, if is a case, and this happens almost every time. And every time you are talking about anxiety, I mean, every time you are saying, the more it occurs, right? And then you're saying that, okay, it's occurring more than it should be. We know for sure that that is a case of separation anxiety.
Oh, okay, fine. So, Anand, then tell me one thing. So, are there some specific causes that are related to separation anxiety, as in a particular upbringing of the dog, or you get a dog from a shelter, or the dog's experience as a puppy? So, are there any causes, can you throw some light on that?
Yeah, absolutely. There are definite causes, right? Everything goes back to the background. Mostly goes back to the background, or it goes to how we have brought up our puppies at pet parents. So when I say background, there are a couple of things that we want to consider, right? So one is, as a puppy, did the puppy go through some kind of a stress? And I'll give you a simple example, right? So the stray dogs that we see on the street, and it's not a very nice example, but I think that's a more relatable example. The stray dogs that we see, they have a lot of puppies out there, right? But the puppies are not in great condition, right? They're either living in a gutter, or they're living behind some bush and things like that, till they're immovable, right? So like till about 20 odd days, 25 days, they don't venture out too much. But after that, they start venturing out. And when they start venturing out, they don't realize that the world is not a great place for them, right? And there a lot of bad things can happen. Some puppies sort of, they don't survive a lot of things, right? But the mother, because the mother is so attached to the puppies, and let's say something bad happened to one of the puppies, what the mother will do, and I'm sure a lot of people must have seen, what the mother will do is she will come back and she will try and hold on to the rest of the puppies, right? She will move the puppies from one place to another. Now, because the mother has picked up anxiety, and she knows that she has, and what they do realize that how many are there. They will continue to, like, I don't know if they can count. I mean, there's some evidence to suggest that they can make out how many are there. They will continue to search for that one that is missing. And the more they do that, they'll push the rest of it. The more they do that, the other puppies kind of pick up on that energy. Now, if it repeats a little bit more, right? So let's say another puppy goes out, and if there is a, when something bad happens, if there is a sound or something like that, and the mother also reacts, what does the puppy learn is that something bad will happen when either somebody goes out of the nest or people start going out. Now this puppy comes home, let's say this puppy comes home, and then you leave the house. So the puppy starts, because it doesn't have too many people around, or it doesn't have the companion, starts whining. What do? You come back to the puppy and say, okay, don't worry, I'm right here. So the puppy realizes, hey, if I whine and if I bark or something, they come back to me, right? And that's what the puppy learns, and it's always looking for that kind of a companionship. And it can be the similar thing with even when puppies are bred, if they're given away too young, that's what happens, right? So puppies are given away at a very young age. The mother is looking for the rest of it. And for the ones that remain in the litter, they constantly say that, hey, one puppy goes and the mother acts really crazy, there's anxiety, and then that just starts building. When the puppy goes home and you do that, and it could be from a very small, it could not even be outside the house, it could just be that you have gone out of sight, and then the puppy picks up. So it can start from there. The background can be from there, and then it builds, so on and so forth. And then after that, it depends on how we bring the puppy up, and what are we doing, how are we taking care of that, etc.
Yeah, you mentioned a very important point, Anand, about the age when we get the puppies, because this is my first-hand experience. We got Sparkle when he was just 30 days old, and I think that also kind of contributed to this behavior of his. So I think it's very important for pet parents to understand the minimum age that they get puppies home. That is very, very crucial. So we have some questions here, Anand. So we have Sudeep asking this question that are some breeds more prone to anxiety than others?
Yes, absolutely. There are some breeds that are more prone to anxiety, and I'll give you a reason. Right, one of the reason is this. Right, indie puppies sometimes have this challenge when if they have a bad history, like what I was saying. Right, they get either they're separated from the mother at a young age, or the mother has had something to do with, I don't know, the traffic or something happened, right? And the puppies lost their mother. They moved out from the mother at a young age, or one of the puppies or a couple of their litter mates had some issues, and then they saw that happening. And because it's a they don't realize the impact of it as much as the mother realizes, and then starts putting it into their head. So that is one aspect. The second is among the other dogs that we see, we do have certain dogs are divided into different groups based on work that they do. There are certain breeds of dogs that work were bred to work very closely in olden times, like with the hunter, for example. One of that group
Right.
is what we call as the gun dog groups, which is typically where our labs, goldens, cockers, springers, all these are in that group. Now, because they were bred to be so closely working with the hunter, because only till the hunter says, okay, now you need to go and you need to do this, they will go, they have a job to do, right? And they were constantly like stuck to the hunter for the time that the hunting would happen, like 7 8 hours, 10 hours, etc. But otherwise they also had companions of the other dogs that they would. Dogs
Right.
that seem to, and there are many studies that suggest both ways, but in my personal experience, I have seen that dogs that belong to the gun dog category, unless they have been raised really well, which is basically from a very young age, they have been brought up and they've socialized and they've had their alone time, etc., etc. Many of these
Mhm.
guys, by nature, tend to have separation anxiety, because golden labs are known to be like, they're so clingy, right? They almost get attached
Yeah.
to us mostly. And when that happens, or initially when as an upbringing, if we continue to build on that, right, and saying that, okay, I will be here all the time and not give you your space, etc., etc., they get attached to that. Then after that, when you actually have to go out or do something, then becomes a bit of a challenge. So this is my personal experience, but I do believe some of the gun dog breeds do seem to show signs of having, a higher degree of separation as compared to maybe some other more independent dogs.
Yeah, that's I can tell that from my own experience. Also, Anand, one very, very important discussion that I was going to come to, and many of our viewers have asked this question as well. So there's this post lockdown period that we're talking about, right? The COVID situation, all of us are hoping that it gets better and the lockdown lifts, and then we all start going out of the house. So we move from one spectrum for the dog where the entire family is there for them, and then suddenly people start going out. For some, maybe the dog is alone or for a couple of hours or more. So we have a question from Anusha here. Once the new normal starts and we start going to work, how do we prepare the pets to accept that? All these 4 months, they have had all our and
Right.
actually. Yeah, so even Sudeep has asked those people who have adopted a dog during lockdown, and this is another thing, Anand, we've seen, right? The surge in adoption of dogs during this lockdown period. So, what happens? How do they face this challenge now when people start going back to work?
Okay, so I have 4 words of advice: routine, 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 routine. Right? I think you have to get your dog. Yeah, so you have to get your dog into routine. As much as I know everyone wants to spend time and you want to make sure that, hey, this is a good time to spend time, by all means do that, but do not get out of the routine. If you're saying that going forward, when people start going back to work, or when puppies, also the newly adopted ones, what would you be doing say, I don't know, right, when, maybe 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 5 months down the line, but
Yeah.
fix a routine, right? Which
Nobody
is
knows.
yeah, yeah. But fix a routine. What time you'll wake up? What time you're going to feed the puppy? What time are you going to give the walk? After that, you'll probably go to work, right? And dogs anyway, they like to sleep a lot. But do not overindulge them just because you're at home, especially after you've finished these things, which is a regular thing, right? And let's say you're at home and then you're working. Do not go out of your way and say, okay, I'm at home, so why don't I now take my dog for his fourth walk and her sixth walk? Don't do that. And the dog will start expecting that. They'll be like, "Huh, okay, every time I come and whine to you, you want a break, perhaps because you're bored of all the Zoom calls and everything, and you're saying, okay, fine, let's just go for a walk, right? And you're also like stuck. Don't try not to do that. Get your dog used to a certain routine. And if you're saying, hey, I will do a 3 walk a day, by all means stick to 3 walk a day. But make sure that in 3 or 4 months or wherever, you're able to provide that 3 or 4, whatever, right? How many hour number of walks. So what you would be providing after the lockdown is they start with that now. Second is, when you're working, I mean, this is something that I really like to tell everyone is why. See, because dogs like to sleep, and you have to imagine when you're not now you're working here and the dog is sleeping right next to you and you're petting the dog and you're doing everything and the dog is feeling very comfortable. Imagine when you start going back to work, he's going to miss you, right? You're not going to miss him as much as he is going to miss you. You will go to work, to your friends, to your
Absolutely.
colleagues, everything. He will keep pacing around the house and searching to say, hey, where did these people go? Everybody was here and everything was there. Where did they go? So let's not set wrong expectations for them, right? And that's what I'm saying. So if you're at work, try and have your work. If you can close doors, I think physical barrier is, I think, one of the biggest things. Have a physical barrier in. Your dog can be in a different room, you can be in a different room, come back. You can, of course, pet like when you're having lunch, etc., etc. It's all right, but again, when you go back to your routine, he has to be in a different space, you have to be in a different space. And then evenings is, if you feel that going forward, evenings is when I'm going to be there, by all means, right? Spend a lot of time, engage with the dog, train the dog, work with the dog, etc., etc., because that evenings are going to be relatively free, even this post the situation that we are in, right? So routine is really, really important, and stick to that routine for the dogs.
Right. Yeah, that's very important, I believe. And many people very subconsciously, I think they just happen to do that, right? You don't realize that you are changing the routine of your dog. You are being available to your dog all the time, because that's something that we as pet parents love, and also our dogs love that. So I think this is something that we have to keep in mind very, very strongly, to stick to a routine. Anand, we were talking about, so we touched upon how the puppy's upbringing happens and how it affects the separation anxiety. I would also like to know, what about adult dogs? What are the sudden changes probably that happen in their life, where they start showing signs of separation anxiety when they're adults, or they cope a little better in that sense?
No. I have seen a lot of adults also who start showing separation anxiety. Reason being, I think one of the biggest reasons is the situation we are in today, right? Unknowingly, we end up giving them a lot of time and attention. And then suddenly there's a vacuum, which is basically we start going back to work, kids start going back to work, everybody gets busy with their own respective lives. And then the poor dog is left fending for himself or herself, right? In those cases, separation anxiety can start in an adult dog. And before COVID, I know I used to. I mean, there have been many cases. It used to be something very similar, right, where somebody is at home 24/7 for the dog, right from a puppy, and they brought the dog up, and somebody is always there. And then suddenly something changed, right? I don't know, like somebody got married, somebody is going abroad, or they had to something or the other, right? Whoever the puppy, the dog was used to, and I had a case where there was a girl. Basically she was very, very attached to the dog, and she was preparing for, I don't know, for some exam for like a few months, and then the dog was with her, etc. Then she had to fly abroad for studies, and the parents were working. So the dog, once she left, the dog really got into like a depression kind of a phase, and then started showing all kinds of signs because nobody else is there after being with somebody. So I think it is more about us, right? So you always have to think about, am I doing the right thing for the dog by also giving too much time and attention? Is this a good thing? My thumb rule here is, if you know for the rest of his or her life, right, and their lives are unfortunately very, very short, right, only maybe 10, 12, 15 years,
Yeah.
but if you can give that 10, 15 years without changing too many things, or if you can provide something like an alternate system where somebody, like if you're not there, friends, family, I don't know, pet sitters, somebody can come in, take care of the dog for the next this one, then it's okay. By all means, then just go ahead and do. But if you think, hey, no, I don't think that's true, or I'll not be able to do this, or I think it's going to be challenging, then keep that in mind before you add to giving too much attention, and then not having enough space with not giving enough me time to the dogs, basically.
Right. So, Anand, this brings me to this idea that when we always say that when we are getting a dog at home, the entire family has to be ready, right? It should. I think it's better. The dog is managed better in the way where it is attached to all the family members. Then I think that kind of helps the dog to manage if one person goes off, right? Or even socializing dogs with friends, because I'm sure if you don't take your dog anywhere at all, and suddenly there is a situation where you have to keep him somewhere or keep him in a boarding place, and then there everything goes haywire in his life.
Right. No, I think I think it's a very, very good point there, Malvika. I think it is important to have the dog socialize with everybody in the house, because support system is really, really important. Like we do with kids, right? If one person is not there, the kid should be able to sort of at least do well with somebody else, so on and so forth. Yeah, a problem does occur when it is one dog is attached to one person, and then that person for some reason is not around, and then the dog just gets into an anxiety phase. We will touch upon I think exercise and how do we manage separation anxiety, I think, in just about a bit. I think maybe okay, I think we lost Malvika here, but let me take one question here. Okay, so Padmashri says, even if you have more than one pet, I've seen that one of them start missing the parent when they step out. So this boy starts crying, a roadie literally cries, instigating the other pets start howling. We do give them instructions before leaving, but at times they just ignore. How do we address this? Yeah, so multi-dog household, I think it is definitely, it is also, a concern when one dog has separation anxiety. Hi, Malvika. I think, Malvika, can you hear us? Okay. Okay, so let me just take this up, right? So, I've seen one of them start missing the parent in the sugar. Okay. So what happens is, this is exactly what's going to happen, right? So if one dog has, separation anxiety, and then they start, the howling and the whining and whatever, other dogs will pick up on this, right? I mean, more often than not, that's what happens, right? These behaviors tend to pass on from dog to dog. Sometimes other dogs, in cases I've seen the reverse also happening. But if the calmer dog, then this one which has got slight separation anxiety will then also become calmer in some point of time. But how do we address this? Is I think you need to work with the dog that has got separation anxiety, and I think you have to start slow, not just by leaving, but you need to start in your home itself, giving him some time, alone time, even when you guys are at home. Slowly start step by step, such that he starts to becoming a little comfortable being by himself, and then you get him introduced. I think we will touch upon a few more pointers, so stay tuned. I think there are a few things that I wanted to talk about when it comes to how do we address. There are a few things. We will just touch upon that. Hey, hi, Malvika.
Yeah, my internet connection. Hi, sorry, my internet connection seems to be really a problem. I don't know what is wrong.
No, no,
Yeah.
no worries.
So Anand, the issue. So Shubhojit has put up a point when we talk about physical separation, as you were saying, right?
Right.
So they what his point is that how do you, when you're staying in the same house, is it really possible during boarding? It's a good idea, but if the dog is at your place and your smell is all over, does that make much of a difference?
Sorry, could you? I'm sorry. In a boarding, it seems like a good idea. What was the question?
Yeah, for the physical separation, basically, what you're suggesting about when you're working and we keep the dog in another room. So what he's saying is during boarding it's a good idea, but if the dog is at your place and your smell is all over, does it make that much of a difference?
Yeah, so see, the thing is, we have multiple aspects to this, right? And just to add to what Padmashri was also saying, is that so see, the minute the dog sees you, sees you leaving the house, so there are some triggers that the dog is picking up, and has always seen that. Let's say it is normal, right? We all wear different outdoor clothes. Then maybe there's this different perfume. Maybe we wear a jacket. We always pick up some keys, either to lock the house, either to take the car, something, right? By car, whatever it is. We wear different kinds of shoes when we go out, etc. So all these triggers is something that has led for the dog to believe that, hey, we are going to go out. And when we go out, what happens is we close the door, right? The dog is not able to see us, is not able to hear us, none of that, right? So there's a barrier. When we try and reverse this, what I mean by that is, and a simple solution to that is, if you know what the triggers are, and this is something that I recommend, it's a little comical, but what I would suggest is, you have to do everything that you would do when you're going out, which is basically wear different kind of clothes. If you're wearing a jacket, you wear the jacket. Perfume, put the perfume. Take the keys, and don't go out. Just sit on the couch and watch Netflix. Your dog will anticipate that you're going to go out, right? And he's already building that in his head that, oh, you're going to go out, and you were going to leave me and go. But then your all the triggers that you're doing, you will just sit down and you're going to be there with him, and then you'll say, hey, I'm not going to go anywhere. So what happens is, you remove those triggers from his mind, so he's not anticipating what is going to come through. Then he'll say, okay, sometimes you wear these clothes and you sit at home, sometimes you go out. So I'm not sure. So should I be reacting to this? Should I not be reacting? And then when you wear all that, you step out and then come back right in. It's not even like you're gone away, right? You just open the door, close it, again come back in. So dog's like, okay, you came back. And then you make it 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. And then the dog is like, now the dog learns to just wait for you to come in rather than get into doing, sort of other things. So physical barrier is one of the, at home also, right? You can just leave him in a different room, close it. He knows you're there, but you don't meet, but he or she knows you're there. And then you let him and say, okay, I'm right here.
Right.
And then again go inside, close the door. So you may have to play around with a few things depending on how severe is the separation anxiety.
Right. Anand, I had one doubt in here. Like when we talk about attention, we talk about separation anxiety. Does it also it also includes the amount of attention that the dog is getting, right?
Yes, it does get, right. So it is more about again, right?
My point here was, in terms of attention, does this manifest, do dogs also manifest this behavior when we get another dog? It was just a thought, like if you get another pet, is this a behavior that you see in the dog that is already there with us?
Right. So why? So again, right? So we want to understand, why is the dog exhibiting these behaviors? Is it that you're constantly with the dog, and the dog doesn't have any personal space and constantly wants you to be around, and hence when you leave, starts getting anxious, right? So that is one. Or it could also be that if your dog doesn't have enough mental and physical stimulation, it can also cause, right? So there's a lot of buildup of energies. You've probably just taken the dog out for a quick walk and then back, and then you're saying, okay, bye bye, now I have to go to work. Now you, and a breed like, say, a lab or a golden or a cocker, these are all, they have a high amount of energy, and if that is not, the physically and mental stimulation is not there, what are they going to do? Then they'll start getting into something or the other, right? And more so when you're not there, because then they can do a lot of things which nobody's there to sort of stop them. So mental physical stimulation is one. Attachment to one person, or usually that's what happens with separation anxiety. They more often than not attached to one particular person. That is a mental stimulation. Is that, again, you could take your dog out for like a 45 minutes walk, but mentally the dog is still very, very active. What have you done to give it some kind of mental stimulation, right? You'll have to play with them, maybe give them some nose work, right? Breeds that like to work with their noses, smell, sniffing games, hide and seek games. Dogs that like to jump and do that, you do the jumping games. Dogs that like hounds, they like to dig and go there. So if you're in an apartment, you don't have place to dig, you can do it yourself. You can put you can get 4 or 5 your Amazon boxes or something like that, and make a little tunnel, keep something for it, allow the dog to pass through that. Everything the dog is thinking, right? So the minute the dog does all these things, the dog then is exhausted. Then when you leave, then this anxiety is not because of separation. Then it could be that the anxiety is because that the dog was just not physically and mentally stimulated enough, right? So it's important to know what is it that is, again, right, that is causing this, and based on that, then how do we kind of address the situation?
Correct. Yeah. So, So that follow up to that the one that I asked you right now is: do they also, if I get a second pet in my house with Sparkle already being there, and if my dog is anyway showing signs of this anxiety, are there chances that gets aggravated, or maybe he finds a companion, so it helps him manage it? How is it?
Yeah, sorry, I did not. In my going all over the place, I forgot to answer that question. But yeah, so what if you bring in a second dog, right? And what if you can bring a second dog be a solution? Knowing that, yes and no. Yes, if you know that the dog is got boredom issues and or has got too much excessive energy that for whatever reason you're not able to dissipate, and is not as attached to you per se, because if it says that you are the person who is giving me all the time and attention, and if you go away, obviously I'm going to brood over it. But then, hey, there is somebody else who can give me a companionship, right? Maybe those two dogs can play with each other. They can also expel energy. By playing, they will expel energy. So if the dog is high energy and hence is showing signs of anxiety, then then it's a good idea. But in this case, that is actually not separation anxiety. So the dog is not separation. So the problem is actually more to do with boredom, more to do with the lack of exercise, etc. But there are times when this is just not going to work. Bringing another dog is just not going to work, because, like I said, there are some dogs that are, and this is true blue separation anxiety cases, when they are super attached to just one person. Nobody in that house, like you would have seen that person go, everybody else on the house can be there, but the dog is constantly looking for them. Even with people being in the house, they will howl, and they will sit near the door, and they will whine. They'll go till that person comes back. In that case, if you bring another dog, it's not going to help. In most cases, it's not going to, unless they both bond together, and then you're able to leave these two. The clear sign will be if you leave these two in a different area where none of you guys are there, and then they're happy doing their own thing, playing, they'll sleep, they'll do their own thing, then it's okay. Then when you leave, they don't really care too much. They're like, we have company and we have enough time, we will do that. So it's important to know what is really, where are we touching that it is just boredom, lack of exercise, lack of mental stimulation, and where does it move into separation anxiety? And based on that, these are possible solutions that we can look at.
Right. Also, Shobit has asked an interesting question: what if we get a cat? will another species help in such a situation?
Well, Shobit, again, it's the same thing, right? So whether it is a dog or a cat, the dog in question. Let's say this dog has got severe separation anxiety. Then it is about moving, that focus from this one person to be bonding. If this dog can bond with the cat and is able to play with the cat and they are able to keep themselves engaged. Then they are not really bothered about the person who's going in and out. Right, so it doesn't really matter if it's a dog or a cat, but just have to make sure that the dog and cat actually bond, right? It can't be the other way around. But I think otherwise it's all right.
Yeah. So Anand, getting to ways of managing now, separation anxiety in dogs, we have a question from one of our viewers. Are there familiar objects of the pet parent left with the dog that can allay or decrease their anxiety?
Yeah. So again, one of the things is that we try and say one of the things that I like to do is, first of all, if we think that let's say we have identified there is separation anxiety, right? So step by step we need to do this, which is all that you want to do cannot be live. Which is basically you'll have to do it while being in the home, right? So if you know that your dog has got separation anxiety, then what you want to do is you can have a familiar piece of cloth, whatever, but it'll have to be in a separate room. So first step would be if there are two rooms, you can have a baby gate in between wherein the dog can see you but cannot come and meet you. You can put that, right? You can put familiar objects there. You can give it some really tasty chewies, right? Treats that they can gnaw and chew for like a few hours, because then mental stimulation happens, their mind is working, then they get tired out. Then you can also have you can have their bed, you can have these toys, etc. But first step is they should be able to see you, but they should still not be able to get to you, right? So there is no physical barrier, but they can see. So there'll be a little bit of whining, there'll be this, that. But as what we need to do as pet parents is we shouldn't be going there and then saying, okay, it's all right, it's all right. You just do your work, right? You're there, I'm here, it's all right. So they will at some point settle down. Usually they'll settle down near the door, or they'll put their nose very close, half of the nose will be outside perhaps, etc. That's when you want to reward them. That's when you open up the physical barrier, and then they come out. You want to reward them, you can reward them. But the treat that you're going to give them has to be something only when you give them when you're probably going to leave, not before, and it cannot be lying around that they lose that novelty value, right? So that is the first step. Once the dog starts getting used to that, you leave your familiar space because there is smell, etc. You give like a nice toy that they can, like the chewy things which has got like some nice treat and all that. Then you bring in a physical barrier, which is like close the door. They will again whine, they'll do this, whatever. But the time to open the door would be when they stop the whining, then they stop the barking, because you are telling them that, hey, if you stop, the door will open magically and I'll come back to you. But if you're barking, whining, nothing is going to happen. And you also have something to do, right? If they focus their energies on that, if there is an energy dissipation issue, that will also get taken care of. And then slowly you move to the door, exactly the same thing, right? You have to pretend that you're going, but you don't go, so that you bring down any kind of triggers that are there. And then you start off by going out 1 minute, just go, open the door, come back inside. Then open the door, close the door, go for 2 minutes, come back, then 5 minutes, come back, 10 minutes, come back, 15 minutes, come back, so on and so forth, till the dog realizes that, okay, I just need to sit and wait, and then they'll be okay. Plus, if the dog starts realizing that I have this treat that I can work on, nothing like it.
Oh, great. So basically, this is about managing at home. Now, what about, I was coming to this question, and Antelina has also, how do we, how does a pet parent choose a boarding for their pet with separation anxiety when there is a travel emergency? Now, we don't have time. There's suddenly something that comes up and we have to handle this. How do we handle this, especially when our pet is having separation anxiety?
Okay, so given that we are assuming that this particular pet has already got separation anxiety, maybe the pet parents are working on it. So in those cases, what I would suggest is, I think two things I would suggest is, If they're going with boarding, you have to go to a boarding facility which probably there is somebody at the other 24/7, right, and have to give them that kind of time and attention. And if the dog is comfortable with other dogs, then it's good to have a boarding facility which also has other dogs, because then they'll keep themselves engaged. Definitely not to leave the dog in a place where, let's say, in a typical boarding setup, right, where everyone goes into, like, say, maybe people or caretakers or whoever, right, they go back and they have different areas of sleeping. The dog is left alone, then the dog is going to really get stressed. The other alternate option that I can suggest, actually two alternate options I can suggest, is you may want to look at home boarding setup, because the dog is not going from a home to like a kennel, but rather going from a home to another home. Because in a home, what happens is somebody or other is always there, right? You have to make sure that you have to tell the home boarding setup that, hey, listen, my dog has separation anxiety. Choose a place where somebody or the other is there, because then in the nights the dog can sleep in the bedroom, along with there, so they can sense that somebody is there, etc., etc. So there's not much of anxiety. And if it's a short, because it's an emergency, somebody or the other will be able to manage. And or you can look at, if it's going to be like a day long or something like that, you can even look at pet sitters who can come and stay with the dog during the time that you're gone. But end is that you may have to work on the dog separation anxiety, because if you don't, then the number of chances for the dog, I mean, in terms of opportunities for the dog to board, etc., etc., actually starts coming down quite a bit.
Right. Anand, we have a question from Sudeep. Does Anvis offer case-by-case consultation to new parents who find themselves in difficult situations with their pets? How does one go about it? You want to take that?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, Sudeep, we do have consultation sessions. We have about 3 of us who do take up this one-on-one consultation session. So we basically, how it happens is, because one size does not fit all, and separation anxiety, like we discussed, right, can stem from multiple issues, right? It can stem from birth, it can stem from upbringing, etc., etc. So we like to get a complete understanding of the background. What are the challenges, what is happening, how does this work, etc. And then we propose solutions, and then we work through the pet parent to see how we can sort of go through and resolve the problem for the puppy, for the older dog, any of those.
So Mr. Mittal has asked, what is the basic symptoms and signs of anxiety? Mr. Mittal, we've covered that. You can go back to our recording and refer to it. Padmashri has a question here. It has happened the other way with us, Anand. We boarded a cocker for about 15 days, and there was a time where we were at home, and he had a good time with us and the boys. When the pet went back home, he developed anxiety issues, and they had to get the pet back every day because it would cry. As boarders, how do we address this? Apparently, this cocker never showed anxiety issues before that.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Padmashri, I think these are one of the things that does happen. I know it doesn't happen too often, but I have also seen that because of the time and effort that you give, right? Some boarders like yourself go above and beyond when you try and take care of the pets, right? And you're making sure that you've given a lot of time and effort to them. So sometimes, unfortunately, it goes in the reverse thing. So see, if the the dog came to the boarding, had got like fantastic experience, played with your other dogs, and you were there around for the dog 24/7, and then suddenly the puppy went back home where they have a different schedule altogether, right? Which is typically that they are saying, hey, we are not going to be around, or we work, or we have to leave the dog here. Then it is unfair, right? Because it is like setting wrong expectation and then expecting the puppy to do. One of the things like we do is that obviously we try and replicate the schedule as much as possible, right? If some people are saying, hey, we are not there, the dog likes to be on his or her own, we try and give them that alone time such that the puppy dog, I keep saying puppy, but anyway, whichever is the dog, can end up staying a little bit time by him or herself. But if it has happened and then they go back, what I would probably not suggest that they bring the dog back every so often, because again, it is like setting wrong expectations to the puppy, saying that if you're showing these anxiety issues, we will take you back to the place, we'll give you some time to sort of spend, again we come back, and I think probably that may not address a solution in the long term. So we may want to start working on that, which is basically like we were talking about, right? Slowly they start addressing where they leave him or her in a room, maybe close the door, he'll bark for some time, then when he stops barking, then they go back, they reward him, they step outside, they come back, that kind of a thing.
Okay. So this is a very good, I think for boarders, this is it's a very good tip, Anand, because that the dog, it just becomes like the dog suddenly becomes attached to the boarder more than the owner. And that is real, that's not what you really want, right? So Antlina has a very interesting question here. She's asked, have you ever come across a dog with separation that inflicts self-harm? If not, is it possible for a dog to harm himself or herself, exhibiting separation anxiety?
Yeah, very good question. I think, I have seen this, and specifically this happens because, see, one of the things that we also suggest for dogs with separation anxiety is that, with some dogs with separation anxiety, is try and get them used to a space of their own. And typically we do suggest either it could be a home or a crate, and crate works very well initially when you're starting for dogs, because you can keep them closed, then you can slightly start moving them little by little, such that they you build that space also. So some dogs which have got severe separation anxiety issues do not do very well in crates. Like these, I'm talking of bigger dogs, they do not do very well in crates. And when you put them into crates, right, so they do, I mean, I have seen 2-3 types of cases where because they feel so constricted, and they look at it as a punishment corner, because you have to remember the crate has to be introduced very gradually. It has to be a very positive experience for the dog. You can't just put the dog in the crate, close the door, and say, okay, now you're done, right? You figure things out, right? That becomes a punishment corner. So all the dog wants to do is wants to come out of the crate. So when the dog is trying to come out of the crate, there have been times, right? So they will try and gnaw at something, put their leg outside, try and do that, and they can hurt themselves in the process. Even if it's not a crate, even when you keep them confined in a room, I think that can also happen if they try to climb out of the baby gate, or they try to claw on something, they try and scratch the doors, and they can splinters and things like that, and they can hurt. But the other thing that they can do is self-harm, which is basically, especially in these crate situations, I have seen that they start biting themselves, and they start biting themselves with some kind of a vengeance, which is like, especially the paw area, right? They'll start licking, and becomes obsessive, because that is their way of internalizing this, or that's a way of distracting from how to deal with the separation. So how to deal with the separation anxiety. So and it becomes very, very it becomes very severe, such that sometimes they actually go to their bones. So they will lick out the fur, the skin, and they
Oh my God.
and then they'll go to the bone. So it's important to know what is working well, and again, like I said, it's not, there are many things, right, you can do to resolve issues, but it's not about, I heard somewhere or somebody told me, I saw this here, so let me just put the dog in the crate and then close it, because this could be one of the offset of that. So you need to be careful about that.
Anand, I had this question, since Anvis is like leaders in pet relocation. Have you experienced an instance where you relocate a dog, and there, when the dog moves to a new surrounding, and there they start exhibiting any kind of separation anxiety, even though they are with their owners?
No. So it's not separation anxiety. We have seen that
Of
after relocation.
the place that they.
No. So separation. No. We have not seen separation anxiety as much as, but we have seen people. I mean, dogs that get. So let's say they've been away from their parents for a very long time, and they see them, they become a lot more clingier, and it lasts for a few days. And in between the whole jet lag and everything, they just become a little bit clingy. So we generally tell people that, hey, just let him or her be, and then they will get into a routine. So don't overdo it. Don't also, because don't overcompensate for the time that you have not spent, and end up sort of setting up wrong expectations. Just let them get into, again, put them into a routine, right? The food, the exercise, everything, excuse me, and then they will sort of they will get into a routine, and they're usually okay. So we haven't seen too many relocation dogs that have had, actually we have not had any that have had separation anxiety, developed separation anxiety issues as such.
Okay, good. That's really good to know. So when we are talking about self-managing separation anxiety issues, is there a point where we need to seek help, and where do we exactly know where we need to seek help? This comes from a question here, which says, "Are there any anti-anxiety medicines available?" I don't know if you can see it. Are there anti-anxiety medications, especially for a short, unexpected interval, like having to leave at a short notice?
Yeah, I'm given to understand there are a few anti-anxiety medications, and there are a few calming medicines available. I am not a big fan of that, to be very honest. I know some people have tried. It has shown some results. I have also heard of cases when it's gone bad, especially in relocation. It's gone really bad. In some cases, I've heard that. So I'm not a big fan of suggesting anti-anxiety, because this is a more of a behavior issue, right? And by pumping in medication, I don't know if that's going to be a long-term solution. So the solution would be to work through the behavior issue and try and solve it. It's going to be a long time. It's going to take a long time, and it's going to take a lot of time and effort from your side, but it's solvable.
Okay. We have a question from Hardik here. They are planning to adopt a dog soon, and we are fostering a street puppy right now. As first-time pet parents, is it better to get an adult dog, considering both me and my wife are working? Also, please advise what dog temperament we should look for. Hardik, I would advise you can also go on for our one-on-one consultation that is offered by Alpha. I think that will be really helpful for you to understand, and to get an in-depth answer to this. Anand, would you like to touch upon this short in a brief way?
Yeah. So Hardik, yeah. So for me personally, and this is something that I highly recommend, is working people, first time pet parents, all of you. I think my suggestion would be to get in a older dog, an adult dog. The reason I say this is, with older dogs, what you see is what you get. Because you're first time pet parents, you probably have to have the dog stay in for a longer time period. All this doesn't work very well with puppies. With older dogs, you can, and you can get the, like, what is your lifestyle to what the dog is already accustomed to, right? And if you go to like say NGOs, or if people who have dogs up for adoption, etc., etc., they'll tell exactly how the dog is. Will say that, hey, this dog loves people, loves kids, gets along with this, doesn't get along with this. So you have a complete chart that you have for about the dog's personality, right? And see which fits the best to you. You just have to bring it, you have to get the dog accustomed to your home, and then you're on, right? Whereas with puppies, a lot depends on upbringing. You don't know what are the challenges that are there. You cannot leave them. Puppies are like babies, right? For the first year and a half, you have to give them a lot of time and effort, energy, all that stuff. So I would highly recommend to go in with an older dog, especially knowing what criteria you have. Find a pet that matches. There are so many dogs up for adoption. and I'm sure you'll find one that works really well to your lifestyle. What dog temperament should we look for? I mean, it depends, right? I mean, it depends on what you want, right? Family, kids, you want a even-tempered dog. Some people also have dogs. If you have a larger area and you also want the dog to run around and you want a little bit protective nature, there are breeds that suit that. There are groups like indies do very well in groups, and they also help with a lot of other things apart from companionship. So it depends on what you want, and the temperament that matches, right? So you need to, I would feel, if you're going with an adult dog, then it really doesn't matter what is a breed. I think it just goes with the whole matching perspective.
Yeah, Hartik, and as I told you, you can also look out for a one-on-one consultation that will really help you take a decision. We have Antlina's question here. She's saying if there is an extreme case of separation anxiety, which may not be solvable, my take would be to accept the fact that the pet has this issue and not stress the dog further in trying to fix it. Is that the way to look at it? Adult dogs is what she's asking about.
Yeah, so it depends on how, of course, right? Extreme case and how old is the dog at this point in time, right? So let's say if you have extreme separation anxiety in a 1 year or maybe a 2 year old, I still feel that there are many things that we can do to resolve it. It's going to take some time. Obviously, it's going to take a lot of time and effort from the pet parent. There's going to be a lot of change from the pet's perspective, but solvable, because you do not want the dog or you to go through this whole separation anxiety for 12, 15, 18 years of their life, right? And there could be so many things in life that can get thrown out that you may not have an opportunity. Like if you leave the dog and go for some reason, that becomes a big liability for the dog itself, not for anybody else. So I would say younger dogs, even if it's severe, I think give it a shot, start working. It may take another 6 months to a year, maybe sometimes more, but I feel it is workable. Older dogs, right? And I will say, when I say older dogs, I'm saying senior dogs who have crossed, say, maybe 7, 8 years, have got separation anxiety and severe separation anxiety. Then, yeah, in that case, it definitely does make sense. Then I don't think that we want to try and work on that and try and change it. For 7, 8 years of her life, she has probably had this thing, and I think we should just look at management options. Where will I leave? But just make sure you have your plan A, B. Where will I leave in case of emergency, right? Because the dog is so used to me. Do you have a boarding place which you're familiar with? Is there a pet sitter who can come in? Whatever it is, right? Friends, family who can come and take care in case that there are challenges. But have a plan B. I think that's
right.
what I would.
Anusuya has this question about same as we were talking about. Anusuya, we just had a discussion some time back about lockdown and its effects and how we are, how we're supposed to manage it. So she has the same question as, I'm afraid once I start going to office, what will be the situation, and any suggestions how I may not make him used to this lockdown time. So Anusuya, if you look at the recording, you will see that we had a discussion on this. Anand, would you like to, since it's almost 7 now, so would you like to just summarize and give a few tips again on how do you, so the top of the top 5 tips to manage separation anxiety, and something specific to the post-lockdown as well?
Right. So I think my mantra would be routine, right? So stick to a routine. This is more to do with the separation anxiety dogs, right? So routine. I think stick to a routine. What you would be doing in future, that's a routine that you need to sort of stick to even now. I know we want to sort of go ahead and try and change that and give them a lot more time, but keeping that in mind, give them that time, but give it in the time that you will give at a later point. Routine. If you have a younger puppy, start training the puppy to stay alone. Introduce them to a crate, maybe send them to a boarding facility when they run, so they get used to being in different situations, scenarios, and they don't develop separation anxiety, because a puppy is moldable, right? You can use that. So if it is a dog that already has separation anxiety issues, then I think you may have to work with a behaviorist, because you may have to try and find what is it that is causing it, what are the different things that you can do to bring down the separation anxiety. We have worked on many cases where we have brought down the separation anxiety to a large extent, right? So it is definitely possible, doable, but connect with a behaviorist who can sort of help you do this. What else? I feel if you have a younger puppy, work towards it. Make sure that the puppy does not develop separation anxiety for the things that you're doing, and how you're giving the opportunity. Like I said, right, set expectation. If you can do this for the rest of his or her life, it's all right. If you think you're going to be available 24/7 for the rest of his or her 12, 13, 15 years, by all means, right, don't worry about separation anxiety at all. But I feel we can't be absolutely sure, so you need to sort of plan for that. Older dogs, I feel workable. Try and work with a behaviorist, find out what the cause is, because one size does not fit all. A good behaviorist will have a lot of things that they can try, and they can pull out what works for somebody may not work for somebody else, right? Yeah, so I think for older dogs, I think like what Angelina was saying, 7-8 years and has already been, then have a management plan in place. Then don't go stress the dog. I'm not a big fan of that. Management place, in case of emergencies, or if something were to be there that you're not able to be there, make sure you have a plan B in place, so you're kind of sorted on that angle.
Great. Thank you so much, Anand. I would also like to tell our viewers here that we have at Alpha, we actually offer a wide range of courses in terms of pet handling, pet management. Please go on to our website, alpha.anvising.com, and we also have one-on-one consultations with our consultants. Anand will be available for a one-on-one consultation. If you visit the website, register on the website, because dealing with dogs, it's always a wonderful experience when you take an informed decision, and when you're aware of certain issues. So that'll make your life and your pet's life also very, very comfortable, and you will have an amazing experience. Anand, I think we should wind up, and thank you guys. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, Anand. That was an extremely enriching session. Really, really very, very informative.
Thank you so much, Malavika. I'm glad I could help. I hope it helped some of the people who came in seeking for advice.
Yeah, I definitely did. I had a very, very a lot of information actually. So
great.
Thanks a lot. Thanks. Good night. See you. Signing
Thank
off,
you.
Anand. Bye.
Bye-bye.
You want to say something to our viewers?
No, bye. Love your dogs. Bye-bye.